Hi, everyone. Thanks for showing up tonight. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 group. I'm going to give a few more minutes for people to be coming in from the waiting room. But while we are waiting a little bit, if you guys could just share in the chat where you're watching from, what year in high school your student is in, and kind of what type of research you've done so far on colleges. And have you looked at a common data set? Just love to hear who's here tonight and what level of knowledge you might have about common data sets. Great. Oh, no. Did anybody say the password was incorrect? I had to change 2024 to 2025 to get in. Huh. Wow, no. I see that message. Did anybody else have that problem about the password? Okay. Okay, so one person had a problem. I apologize for that. We did change our password. And the only thing I can think of is if you've come to a previous webinar, maybe you had 2024 already like saved someplace. So I apologize for that, but I'm going to make note of that going forward. Okay. So thanks for sharing some of that information. So I'm going to get started. Let me just tell you my housekeeping is that this is actually technically a meeting. I personally like to run meetings instead of webinars because if you guys have questions and you want to unmute yourself, which happens frequently, you can and just ask your question as opposed to only being able to chat in the chat, through texting or so feel free if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question. I'm fine with that. And this is recorded. We send the recording out tomorrow. And I don't think there's any other housekeeping. I'm just going to get going. Okay, I am by myself tonight, so if I'm like looking at a lot of different things, I have two screens going. I'll try and look at questions, but I might miss a question from here or there, but I'll look at the end and I'll scroll backwards. And feel free to ask questions along the way. And I'm going to get started. I'm going to share my screen. I have some slides, and I'm going to share some actual common data sets, so we'll go back and forth. Okay. Let's see. If somebody can just give me thumbs up or make sure that I want to make sure that my screen is being shown. It's the title saying I'm using the common data set to research colleges. Can people see that? Great, thank you. Okay. Oh, somebody said, nope, I can't see it. Just a black screen. Oh no. Okay, hold on. Let me stop and reshare. Okay, how about this? Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, let's get going. So I'm gonna tell you a little tiny history of the common data set. We're gonna review the different sections, and I'm gonna go through an actual sample of a real school's common data set. And then I'm gonna talk to you about a tool that we have, Insights, which has a lot of this data in it. Okay, so I guess the one thing I realized as I'm looking at this about the history, I forgot to look up exactly when the common data set started, but it's definitely been quite a while. It's basically a collaborative between three organizations: the College Board, probably, not always our favorite organization, but they were there from the beginning, US News and World Report, and Peterson's. And the common data set originally started so that it was an easier way for the colleges to share information. The other big effort where colleges share their data is to the government, and it's called iPads, if you've heard that terminology before. But this was an easier way for the colleges to share their information, and particularly for publishers to get access to information. So as I say that, I know that this started way back because US News and World Report use this information to create their big ranking of colleges. So it started way back when we were actually buying magazines to look at this stuff. And the goal was to really create something that was clear and standard. And you're going to see when I show you an example of what the common data set looks like. It is standard. It has specific sections that everybody follows. Most colleges, use the same format, and they go by common definitions. The one other thing I'll note is that, and I'll say it in another little bit, the common data set is actually, for most colleges, is a public information, but these three organizations are one of the only organizations that pull all of the data together. So colleges actually send their information to these organizations. The College Board runs like a group. It's actually a Google group where people from the colleges can ask questions about the common data set to make sure that they're presenting the right information, and the College Board gives them a format to fill it in, and that's what gets sent to US News and World Report and Peterson's. Peterson's is just actually an information company. They do have other aspects of educational services. They do some test prep, but they, over the years, have just become an information gathering resource of this type of information that they then actually license out to search companies and to other colleges to be able to look at all this information in bulk. So there's some good things and maybe not so good things about the common data set. The one pro is that access to the information tends to be earlier than any other information that colleges share. And I'm going to go through a timeline so you understand when colleges usually share this information and kind of what the years of the common data set really stand for. So as I mentioned before, iPads is the government resource, and it tends to lag the common data set, definitely by, sometimes 8 or 10 months. The information that's in the common data set is shared by the government about 8 to sometimes like a year and a half later than when it's in the common data set. So that's the benefit of the common data set. Although, it's sometimes maybe a little easier to access. It is actually easier to access information when it gets to the government because they have a search engine on top of it. Common data set information is mainly public, but one of the cons is there are a handful of colleges that don't share their information. When I say it's public, it is no regulation that a college has to share their information. Again, most colleges do, but some, for lots of reasons, don't. For a long time, and it might even still be the case, Columbia University didn't want to share their common data set information. I just looked up right before I got on, I was going to potentially share Duke's common data set, and they didn't release the latest one. So, here and there, colleges don't share it. And, I could come up with lots of reasons. One, some very innocent one is the office that puts together this information is called the Office of Institutional Research. Sometimes they just get behind. Sometimes they have other priorities. So, that might be a reason why it's not shared. Another reason, which Columbia was accused of for a while, is that they didn't want people to really see the information that was being asked of in the common data set. So, there could be different possibilities. I'm going to show you some of the data. I find that it's most valuable if you're wanting to research colleges from an admission standpoint, and there's lots of data that we'll show you and talk about, and also from a financial aid standpoint. So there's lots of detailed information about the type of aid colleges give for need-based aid and for merit scholarships. And, I have a typo. That's supposed to be postings over multiple years can show trends. So if you're able to get, or if you want to look at, and compare multiple years of a common data set for a particular college, you might definitely see trends in lots of different areas. It could be in their funding. It could be in the SAT scores. So, that's interesting information. So quickly, some of the cons. Besides not every college not always sharing their common data set, I think much more frequently what happens is a college will share the common data set, but they don't answer all the questions. That could be kind of frustrating, that you just you want to see this information from the college, and they've maybe again purposely they've chosen not to answer that question. So that's a con and can be frustrating. This other point, there is no checks for accuracy. And that's just not with the common data set information. That's even with the government information. There's just not a mechanism that can go through. First of all, there's so much data. And second of all, there's no place there's no accountability per se, which is somebody or an organization that's going back to the college and saying, hey, this isn't accurate, or this doesn't make sense. Once in a while, it bubbles up because a piece of data that a college has shared in their common data sets just doesn't make sense, and people will bring it to their attention. But other than that, we unfortunately don't necessarily have a mechanism to know how accurate it is. But I cross my fingers and say, the colleges are doing their best. I haven't really seen a major scandal, except for Columbia universities, where they didn't share accurate information. So we're just going to go, forward under the premise that the colleges are doing their best and they are sharing the best information that they have. And then another point is, you could view this as a con, but definitely this information is used by publishers. This is the primary source of information that a lot of rankings are based off of. So if you feel overwhelmed with the rankings and want to ignore it, that's fine. But this is really the source of where this started. And, sometimes definitions, it's not that the definitions, I should really rephrase this, are consistent. It's that sometimes the people gathering the information and sharing it might not be, doing it in a consistent way. Again, not purposeful, but just being a member of this particular group where the people gathering the common data set information are constantly asking questions. You can just see it's a matter of interpretation. Somebody asking, do I need to include transfer students in this number, or so it's just people trying to do their job the best they can, and sometimes interpreting the definition differently. Okay. So let me give you a little bit of explanation about the timing of the common data set. We live in this world where we're so used to getting immediate information, and something just happened, and we want to know about it. And that's great, but it's a little harder with this type of quantity of data. But let me just start from the beginning. So when you see a common data set and it says, and this is the most recent one, it says 2023, 2024, let me tell you what those numbers mean. First off, the common data set is based on data that is for the students that have just recently enrolled in the fall of at that college. So let's take we're now in 2025, right? The students who enrolled in the beginning of this academic year was for the fall of 2024. So right now, as we speak, the Office of Institutional Research is gathering the data. They couldn't start gathering that data until the students enrolled, right? So they enrolled in the fall of 2024, and then it just takes time for them to kind of get their information together. So it's really just about now, March, where you might start seeing some colleges release their next round of common data set. That would be the common data set, which would be for the year 2024, 2025. But that it's really early. Most colleges don't get it out until like late spring, early summer. It just takes time that they're gathering all this information across all the different areas of the college. But going back to the example of 2023, 2024. So the 2023 represents the fall of which the students were enrolling, right? So that's the beginning of when the data, what years that the data represents. So it's covering the academic year 2023, 2024. The next thing to think about is if those students enrolled in 2023, that means that they were applying to college in the early winter of 2022 and through the winter and spring of 2023. So a common data set that has the years 2023, 2024 is showing you admission data that happened in late 2022, 2023. That's not bad, but I'm just giving you the kind of the timing of what the data is from. Everybody, of course, wants like the session that the admission session that just ended last year. The admission session that the admission data that ended last year isn't going to be available because those students have to start school, and they just did. They started in the fall of 2024, but that common data set hasn't come out yet. So although you might see here and there, these are early admission rates, from, I mean, we've gotten early admission rates from the season that just, ended in December. Why you can look at those, but why you can't necessarily compare it across the board is because we don't have the data from every school. So that's why, like in different college search websites, even in the tool that we have, we are showing common data set information from 2023, 2024, because we have it across the board for all the colleges. So we can do an apples, and you can do an apples to apples comparison. So, and honestly, from year to year, yes, maybe there's a school here and there that's gonna, have a big change in an admission rate, but I've looked at admission rates for like a long time. Over a 5 or 10 year trend, yes, you will see, changes, but from year to year, you're not going to see a huge change in an admission rate, that might have been 42%, and maybe now it's either 43% or 44%. It's still kind of in the general range. So I'm just telling you that so you don't feel badly like that you don't have the absolute most up-to-date data, which quite honestly just isn't available yet. And as I mentioned, you'll start just now seeing colleges release the 2024, 2025 admission data set. But it really, most of it doesn't come out until, May, June, July. And I know from our own tool, we work with Peterson's. We license a lot of the common data set from Peterson's. We start getting a trickling of that new data in July, but the bulk of the new data doesn't come until August. So again, kind of just telling you the timeline of how the data works and when we all get access to it. So somebody said, is there an official landing page for the common data set? I mean, feel free to Google it. There really isn't. I mean, there might be. I mean, when I kind of go off my slides, I'll Google it. I think the last time I looked, there might be like one page that just explains it, but that's about it. There's not much more than that. It's really Googling individual colleges' common data set. Okay, so again, what I just mentioned is if you want to see an individual college's common data set, the easiest thing to do is you just go to Google, you type in the college name. This is an example, Tulane. You would say Tulane common data set. And most colleges are going to have a page like this where they will show you their most recent. Actually, hey, in this case, I just took a copy of this last night, and Tulane does have their most recent 2024, 2025 common data set. We'll pull that up and look at it. And they'll also show you the past common data sets. If, again, as I mentioned, from a trend standpoint, you want to go back and look at it. So usually the easiest thing to do is really to go to Google and find it. It's not always easy to find it on the college's website if you're going directly. So common data sets have these sections, and this is what makes it common that this is the same for each college that you're going to pull up. And I'm just going to quickly kind of give you the go through what these sections are, and then right after this, I'm going to pull up an actual common data set, and we're going to go through and look through the numbers. So the first one is just general information about the college, their location, contact information, and different degrees that are offered. The next one is about enrollment and persistence, meaning, how many male, females, part-time, full-time, undergraduate, graduate have enrolled this fall. And then they look at past cohorts to see, how many have returned over the past few years. The section C is where you're probably going to spend the most time. That relates to the first year admissions. That's all the admissions data for the students who were enrolling in the fall that the common data set is all about. Then there's a section on transfer admission, a section on different programs, academic offerings that the college offers, student life, which you will definitely, might be interesting there. That talks about different programs I have, particularly fraternities, sororities, what percentage of the students are in those programs. Section G is annual expenses. You can definitely look at that. But again, that might not have the most recent information. So sometimes I will Google directly, the most up-to-date information from the college websites, because these expenses here, for tuition, room, and board are going to represent the academic year for that common data set. So it's not going to be the most up-to-date one, which that you can definitely get from the college's website. Again, section H, that's going to be your second area where you're going to spend a lot of time in about financial aid and how much do they give for need-based aid, and how much do they give for athletes, and I'll show you those numbers. The next section I is about class size. Again, might be interesting and worthwhile to see what the student faculty ratio is, and they usually give a breakout of class, the actual sizes, and how many sections there are of the different classes. And then degrees conferred. I know, and I saw quickly there was a question about majors. I'm pretty sure that in section J is where they share majors. But unfortunately, and I think somebody asked, can you find out about admission rate, or that is generally a big question, admission rate by majors? Unfortunately, that information is not here. I've seen very few colleges share that information, like 5 or less. The university that shares the most detailed information about their majors and what number of students applied by major and accepted is actually University of Illinois. That the dean there is just very transparent and shares that information. I also think University of Virginia, I've seen that type of detailed information. But again, if I looked it up, it's probably 5 or less, unfortunately, colleges that share that level of detail. Okay, I'm just going to skip right now. Let me get out of my slides and pull up an actual common data set, and we're going to go through it and see what we find. Let me stop my screen, and then I'm going to reshare just to get an actual common data set. Okay, I'm going to share it again. Okay, I'm going to use Tulane's, no particular reason. Just actually give me a thumbs up again if you can see. This is just a Google search. Okay, so I just typed in Tulane common data set up top. Most of the time, the first result that you'll click here is going to be the college's page. This is actually what I showed you before. And I'm actually impressed that Tulane has their most recent 2024-2025 common data set. So again, that means that the students, this is covering the academic year that we're in right now, and this is for students who were enrolled in 2024, and when we go to look at it, it's going to be their admissions data from last year, because it's for the students who just enrolled. So let me pull it up. Again, most colleges show it as a PDF. This is the most standard way you're going to view it. And I can actually enlarge my screen a little bit if that's helpful. It's really, this is the actual PDF that they send to all the other organizations that I mentioned. Once in a while, you will see a college, do something a little nicer. They might just format it differently, maybe because they think it's easier for people to read it. That's nice. In fact, but to tell you the truth, I'm so used to looking at it this way that I wish that colleges just stick to the standard, because it does make it easier when you're jumping from college to college to just look at the format that if they all use. It's just easier to scroll through. So I'm going to scroll. I'm not going to stop at every section, but I'm going to show you the sections that I think are most important and that I mentioned. So again, general information, just the names of people you can contact, the address. We're going to, these are the types of degrees offered by that institution. I mentioned enrollment. So this is just telling you how many men versus women are enrolled, undergraduate, and then graduate. I am just going to point out, just because I've looked at Tulane's a lot, and you're going to see in the admissions data, you can see that, again, not making a judgment, but Tulane just has a much higher percentage of women, at that college. The only reason I point that out is maybe from an admission standpoint, if they're trying to equalize, the genders on campus, they might want to accept more males. So, there might be a higher acceptance rate for men applying to Tulane to kind of get that number closer. So these are the types of, little clues that you can pick up looking at the numbers. Also, it depends if, your student, if you want a school that maybe really focuses on undergraduate education and maybe doesn't do that much graduate education, because, for lots of reasons, people might want that type of environment. You'll see that here, because you'll see how many graduate students there are versus undergraduates. Or, sometimes it might be the opposite. You want to make sure that there's a flourishing graduate population, although with a lot of things going on right now, that's going to be tough with the cuts, but this is where you can see the numbers. Okay. There is a section here, which is also something you'll find in the government IPEDS number by ethnicity. Again, depending if that's an issue that of a concern for you, you can see they don't necessarily give you the percentages, but you can either do the math or kind of eyeball it to get a sense of if there's a lack of diversity, or the diversity is what you're looking for. Oh, thanks. Somebody's sharing. Same thing is true for women at MIT. Absolutely. Female admission rate is almost twice as high. Makes sense, right? And probably the numbers, if we pulled up the MIT common data set, would back that up. Okay, information about who's getting a Pell Grant. That was if they had any 2-year degrees. Okay, we're coming to the section that's going to be most interesting and most important. This is about first-time, first-year admission. So if you see here, this is the first sentence. It says, first-time, first-year students, provide the number of degree-seeking. This is actually instructions to the people filling out the form. Provide the number of degree-seeking first-time, first-year students who applied, were admitted, and enrolled full or part-time in the fall of 2024. So if you're ever confused about like what common data set am I looking at, like what does this represent, always go to this sentence in section C, because that will kind of anchor you, right? So now we know we're looking at information for the students that enrolled in the fall of 2024, this past fall at Tulane. And so again, here's the numbers. They're showing you how many, and this is the actual application numbers. How many men apply to those? So you have to do a little math here, but if you want percentages, the common data set doesn't give you percentages, but how many men applied to Tulane about, a little over 12,000. How many women applied? A little over 20,000. So again, you can see from the start, for whatever reason, and we can dissect that later. Tulane is just getting a much higher number of females applying. So, gosh, it's just like under half, but that's a big difference from the start. So, these are the number of applications that Tulane is getting. And then this is finally how many they admitted. So, they, admitted a little over 1,800 for men. They admitted 2,700 for women. And then you can finally see how many enrolled. So, 685 men enrolled, a little over 1,100 women enrolled. So it's almost like a 2-to-1 ratio of men to women at Tulane. Here's some other interesting information. This is going to vary by school about how what the breakout is of in-state versus out-of-state, but obviously Tulane's a private institution, so they don't have any sort of mandate that they have to take in-state students. But you can see the breakout. If you pulled up an in-state flagship university, you would probably see this very different, where particularly some state universities have a mandate that they have to take a certain percentage of the students need to be in-state. So again, this kind of gives you a clue as to how much harder it's going to be to potentially be an out-of-state student and applying to a state university where you're not a state resident. So this would be important information to look at. Okay, moving on. This is information maybe you don't necessarily need at this point in the admissions research process, but later on in the process, depending on your students' result, you might want to come back to the common data set because this is about wait lists. So does the college even have a wait list? And then if they have a wait list, how many students did they put on the wait list last year? How many students accepted to be on the wait list? Because a college basically can say to you, we are not accepting you, but we're offering if you'd like to be on a wait list. And the student has to decide if they want to be on the wait list. So that's why there's a drop off here. And then actually number of students who were admitted. So again, this is interesting information. It doesn't mean that every year this same thing is going to happen, because obviously it varies based on the circumstances that might be happening that year. It could be that 1 year a lot of students basically, they had a high yield rate, meaning a lot of students accepted, so they don't necessarily need to go to their wait list. But it just gives you an idea maybe of the students who decide to go on the wait list. And if you wanted to look at trends, this would be an interesting trend. I would definitely go back again if your student was in this situation and look at several years. Did Tulane generally, take about 400 people off of the wait list, or did you see varying, changes up and down? That might give you a clue as to what could be happening in the coming year. But, again, just interesting information. Yeah, somebody's saying likelihood of getting off the wait list varies a lot by school. It definitely does. And it's really hard to predict in this particular year what's going to happen, because we just don't know like all the background information about what's going on in that school. Somebody's asking if they're not ranked, what criteria are they using? Again, to some extent, this could vary by college. And I'll be really honest about the wait list. Some colleges might use financial ability to pay as something to use when they're pulling off of the wait list. And it's not really to just be discriminatory against somebody who can't pay, but by the time they get to a wait list, they just may no longer have the financial funds to be giving students additional aid. So that might be a reason why they could be going through and looking at, who has a greater ability to pay, and we're going to prioritize those students off the wait list. That could be one way that they prioritize. It could be another reason, could be just they're looking at, again, what they need to fill in their class. I wouldn't be surprised. We don't have a breakdown of the 432 students for Tulane. They might be prioritizing men, to offer to get them off of the wait list. So again, it could be something about like a priority of that particular year that they're trying to fill, and that might be the reason why they look at the wait list and decide who to pull. Okay. Here's another interesting section about uh, what courses do you need from high school to be applying to the college? Most of this is standard, but the one I want to point out, because we always get a lot of questions about this, is foreign language. We always get this question, does my student really need 3 years of a foreign language? Well, you want to know the answer? Go to the school's common data set. It doesn't matter what I say or anybody else who's helping you, helping your student, or giving them advice about college admissions. This is the source. Come to the common data set. Of course, you can always ask the admissions officer from that college, but it's usually right here. So if you're applying to Tulane, yeah, they're going to expect you to have 3 years of a foreign language. So again, good resource, and you know where to come to look for that information. Okay, next section, section C7. This is called admission factors. So that's like the short definition of it. Again, to me, these are all clues. These are pieces of the puzzle that the admissions office of that college is telling you how they look at applications and how they evaluate students. So these criteria of academic and non-academic are the same for every college who fills out this section. So again, in academic section, there's rigor of the school record. Obviously, that's how hard the types of classes your student is taking. Are they taking, honors, AP or IB classes? That kind of shows, how rigorous those classes are. Class rank. I'm a little surprised that this is very important because I've seen that drop off a lot for a lot of colleges, but that's listed here. Academic GPA, standardized test scores. We're going to talk about that in relation to test optional. The essay, how important the essay, and recommendations. So these are the academic factors, and Tulane is telling you if anything's listed as very important, it is very important. Like this is the top things that they're looking at. And again, these shouldn't be a surprise. You should hear it all the time. That and I do a lot of webinars with the former admissions team, Terry Cowdrey, and I loved the first webinar I did with her. She was very blunt, and she basically said, colleges are in the business of academics. Like, don't be surprised about that. So that's why the rigor of your student's school record and their GPA is so important. Colleges need to make sure that your student can do the work when they get there. So, and you probably have heard it a lot by this point, that those are the most important factors that colleges are looking at. What if your school doesn't do class rank? I wouldn't worry about it. If they don't do class rank, even, then it's not being considered. Again, I'm a little surprised class rank has kind of fallen off of the grid in most schools' cases. So, if your school doesn't have it, then they're not going to penalize your student. Okay, looking at non-academic, let's look at, what's very important here. Extracurricular activities, again, makes sense. College wants to see what your students' interests are, where they've dedicated their time. And I'm gonna jump down. Tulane is also, for them, volunteer work is important. It's very important. Again, if we compare this, I'm going to pull up one other school's common data set, and we can jump to this section. Another college might not have volunteer work as being that important. So, this also might give you a clue, or give your student a clue when they're writing their essays. If Tulane feels that volunteer work is important and your student has done volunteer work, I want to make sure that it's easy to see that in the application, because they're telling you, this is like their blueprint. They're telling you that that's important to them. So the other piece of the other non-academic that people usually look at, the factor, is called the level of applicants' interest. Another phrase that we call is called demonstrated interest. You rarely see, I don't think I've ever seen demonstrated interest as a very important factor, But the fact that it is important is, again, telling you that Tulane feels that showing some signs of demonstrated interest is important to them. I've definitely seen colleges where this level of applicant interest is either in the considered column or is actually in the not considered column, where they're just not using that as a factor. So to me, that the level of applicants' interest is being important to Tulane. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go for a school visit. Although I would say if you're somewhat local to Tulane, they probably would expect that you would have come in person. But if you can't be in person, what else have you shown them that you have interest and you've interacted? Did you show up? Did the admissions rep come to your school and your student, go to their talk? Are you opening up and potentially responding to emails? Did you sign up for an online session? So there are lots of ways to show demonstrated interest, and it doesn't always that you have to physically have gone to visit the campus. But again, for Tulane, I would make sure you have you have something to show that you've demonstrated that your student has demonstrated the interest. Again, you can see nothing you can do about this, but if your student is first generation, Tulane, feels that that's important. So they might give, higher preference to somebody who is first generation. So, and so we're going to come back to test scores, but just see that Tulane lists test scores as important. I don't think I've ever seen a school right now in the test optional world listed as very important. But the fact that they list it as important means that they're considering it even though they are test optional. Again, I've seen test optional schools in this section, and they've listed test scores as just being considered. So if you're comparing colleges and one is listing it as important, another is listing it as maybe just considered, and even though they're test optional, it's giving you a clue that they are, quote, test optional, but they might be leaning towards liking to see a test score. And there's one other section I'm going to show you that also will give you a clue about that. Okay, just looking, somebody is asking, I felt like this was really important to look at before comparing your stats. You can rise or fall relative to your quantitative stats if your more important quantitative stuff is not a good match. Okay, sorry, Melinda. I'm not quite sure exactly what you're trying to say, but you can feel free to unmute yourself and share your comment. That would be helpful.
I mean, like if you are above the 75th percentile for your stats, you kind of think that makes you look like a shoo-in. But if your extracurriculars and character and your essays are not as strong, you're probably not going to look as strong if those are very important.
That's thank you for sharing that. That's a great comment. Right. So, your students, academic stats, as Melinda is pointing out, could be at the really high end, and that is good. And we just looked at the admissions factors, and obviously that's important, but that doesn't mean that's the whole picture. So you can't have just like great academics and then these other areas which are literally just as important in the very important column, like extracurriculars or volunteer work. If that's not there, just because you have these strong academics doesn't mean you're a shoo-in, as Melinda is pointing out. So thank you for unmuting yourself and explaining it more clearly. And I know that this is so hard. I can't remember if I scroll back, if most of you shared. I don't know if I even asked like what year in high school your student is in. We all kind of know by the time your student's in 11th grade, there's not much really that you can, alter about, their extracurriculars or their volunteer work. Of course, they can, add some in. I always wish, if it is so hard to get the younger students attuned to this would be something that it's always a balance. You don't want to make people crazy or students crazy about, only focusing on college and starting to talk about college in 9th grade. But if there was some way that they could just kind of understand the profile or, or what colleges we're looking for early on. It doesn't mean that they have to completely, strive only for that profile, but it just makes you realize, maybe if you had a choice between different things, you might gear one way versus the other if you knew generally, what was more important to colleges or not. It would be, I mean, I will admit when my kids were in high school, I didn't really know about this in ninth grade, so I didn't look at it then. But looking back, it would have been nice to have known some of this like a year or two earlier than when I really did find out about it. Okay, let's continue on. This is the test score section. Here's the other section, and that I find very interesting. Not all colleges share it, but the ones who do, it's can be eye-opening. So this is the percentage of the students who submitted their ACT or SAT scores, and they also enrolled. So the most ideal data would have been if the colleges could tell us the percentage of students who applied and also submitted their scores. They don't do that. But we've got, this is just another clue, although it's not as clean, the data. So again, I'll just repeat it. This is saying this is of the students who decided to enroll in Tulane, what percentage of those students actually submitted their SAT and ACT scores. So again, it's not perfect. I would kind of add this up a little bit because I don't think there's that many students who these days they're taking the SAT and the ACT and submitting both scores to this colleges. So I do believe that most students are taking one test versus the other, and then if they're submitting, they're only submitting one type of test. So you could assume that about 41% of students submitted a score, but these were the students who were accepted and decided to enroll. So you can only imagine that, the students who actually applied probably were at a higher percentage that they submitted their scores. These numbers aren't that high. I'm going to show you one other school where the numbers are higher. So the fact that Tulane said they're test optional, they did say that test scores are important to them. It's not very important. And these numbers are kind of on the average side in terms of the students who were submitting their scores. I would kind of, believe Tulane, at face value that they truly are test optional. But if your student has a test score that's good and it's above, maybe that's definitely, if it's above the 75th percentile, I would submit it. If it's maybe even slightly above the 50th percentile and the rest of your student's application is strong, I might still submit it because they are leaning towards, liking to see a test score, although it doesn't mean that if you don't send a test score in that you're not going to be accepted. That's my interpretation of these numbers. And this is, again, nothing's perfect, but if you go to different schools, common data set, you look at the admission factors of how they rate test scores, and then you look at these numbers, I think you'll be able to get a better sense when it comes time for your student to decide whether or not they should be submitting a test score if they've even decided to take the test and have it. Okay, here's the breakdown of scores by different ranges. This is where we get information related to the 25th percentile, the 50th percentile, and the 75th percentile of test scores. Again, this gives you a sense of where, if you can take your student's score, see where they range, where it falls. Here, if we look at, I'm looking at the ACT scores, majority, like a heavy majority of students, right, who submitted their test scores. And actually, this is first year students. So again, these are students who submitted and decided to enroll. They were definitely, in that 30 to 36 percentile. I would say if your student had below a 30, I wouldn't probably be submitting that unless there was some other factors, why they had below the 30. But this, just gives you a little bit closer peek into, how the numbers break out by a percentile basis. Okay. This is, class ranking, although so many high schools don't do the class ranking these days. And here's GPA. I'll tell you, of all of the data that's across different common data sets, this section is the section I see least filled in, which is also kind of frustrating, because going back to where the admissions factors, where they said academic rigor is so important, and I believe them, it's hard. How do you know your students, academic rigor, how it compares if they're not always giving the GPA here? Tulane actually happens to be giving the GPA, and that's great. But as somebody who has looked at a lot of common data sets, I would say that it would be 60% of colleges do not share GPA information. And for a long time, I was actually kind of annoyed about this, and I didn't know why. I just thought, like, I don't know why they don't want to share it. It would be so helpful, until my friend Terry, who I did webinars with, explained to me why a lot of colleges don't share their GPA. And it's not because they're trying to hide anything. She said it's just labor intensive. In order to share GPA in a chart like this, you kind of have to have apples to apples GPAs, right? And so students are sending in, all different types of GPAs that are calculated different ways, even though they might be sending in, unweighted. The way that high school does their unweighted GPA is a little different than the another schools. Some schools are sending in their, weighted GPAs. Some schools, the A is based on, 92 and above, and other schools it's 90 and above. So it's just so hard for them across the board to have a clean apples to apples comparison, that they themselves don't even they don't always do the recalculation, and that's why this area is the most blank in a lot of common data sets. So very frustrating. I have a little bit more sympathy now that I understand why it's not always there, but the fact that it is there for Tulane is really helpful. Oh, good question. Is this weighted or unweighted? Most of the time, the information in the common data set is unweighted GPA. Again, I've seen colleges be, pretty good about this. And if they're, for whatever reason, and you can see it here, it says they're using a 4.0 scale. For colleges that share this information and it's unweighted, and I happen to know one because I use it as an example, it's University of Miami in Ohio. They make it clear that the information that they are sharing is weighted GPA. Okay, so continuing on, here's just like some deadline information. Let's see. When's the application, end date that students have to send it in by? Here it's January 15th. Here's deadline for housing. Do they allow deferrals? Again, might be interesting if your students like considering a gap year. So Tulane says yes. And then here's early decision information. So do you have early decision? Yes. What's the deadline? November 1st. When's the notification deadline that you're going to notify back? It's December 15th. This other early decision deadline is if they also have early decision 2. So that's what this line is for. And then if you apply to early decision 2, you know February 15th. And then here's the actual stats related to early decision. Number of applications received by that institution. So a little over 1,900. And then number of students that they admitted, 1,156. We actually, in the tool that we have, we do the math behind this. So, I mean, the math here is pretty, straightforward. The 1,100 over the 1,900, I think off the top of my head, it's like it's like over 60%. Of Tulane, this is very high of a percentage of the number of students being accepted early decision. What we also do is we then take these numbers, we back them out of the regular decision or the overall admission numbers. And so I'm going to show you, we show you what the overall admission rates were, and we show you what the early decision rates were, and then we show you what the regular decision rate is, because it's important if your student didn't apply early decision, is, you know, what's the percentage of the students that were accepted regular decision, and that comes down to how many of the students did they accept early decision, what percent of the class was accepted early decision. And I'm going to show, so all these numbers are here. You're going to have to do the math to figure it out. We've done the math for you in our tool. But these are all important numbers to know if your student decides to apply to a school that has early decision, or conversely, if they decide to not to apply to a school that has early decision, which is also a valid decision, you want to know how many students is that school accepting early decision. So how many spots are they going to have left if your student's applying regular decision? And then let's see. So, early action. This is another frustration of mine. So I don't even know why they've not added this to the common data set questions, but they should be asking, just like they do in early decision, for early action, how many students applied early action and how many were accepted? Pretty basic, but they don't. I don't know why. It's so frustrating. So they tell you that Tulane has early action, you have the deadlines, we just don't know the numbers behind it. If you see numbers related to early action, a lot of times it's because we or other people have taken it off of press releases, or a college itself, it might share what their results were for the admission season, and it will be there. It would just be so much nicer if it was in the common data set and standardized like all the other numbers that we're looking at. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly jump to the next section, but you can see there's a lot of data in all of these sections, and it depends what's important to you, that you can kind of dig in, and maybe you'll find some formulas that you think are interesting and do some calculations, but a lot of good stuff here. I'm going to quickly jump to here's a good one. I'll just show you the what academic offerings. What's here? Can you double major? Do they have study abroad? Do they have internships? Do they have an honors program? That's important. It's all listed here. Here's the student life section that I talked about, the percentage of men or students that they're actually, Tulane's not showing you, that are in fraternities and sororities, how many live off campus, how many commute. Again, gives you a sense of what the student life, what the culture is like there. Okay, I'm gonna jump again. My suggestion: don't necessarily look. Well, actually, I mean, I would pull tuition, room and board numbers directly off of the website. That's going to be the most up-to-date information for that. Okay, let's get to section H, financial aid. There's a lot here. I'm not going to go through every section, but I'll go to the ones that I think are most important. Again, you're going to have to do the math. They just give you the raw numbers, but I can talk you through what the math is like, and I can show you in our tool that we've done a lot of the math. So let's start from the beginning. They give you the top line numbers. Again, this is all rolled up. How much federal aid does Tulane get? They get 7.9 million. How much institutional aid? That's really important. And then they break it out by need-based and non-need-based. So Tulane, so this is basically their budget, right, of the money that they have to give out to students. They have $101,000 for need-based aid, and 101 million dollars for need-based aid, and 56 million for non-need-based aid. And then we're going to show how it's broken down further. If this is important to you, you can also look at the types of loans that parents are taking out. I mean, why I think it's important is if there's a school that parents are taking out a lot of loans, it means that they're not getting the aid that they need for the students to go there. So again, that might be a clue that if you don't have the budget, that you might not want to consider that school, because you're going to have to take out loans for your student to attend. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Line A, number of undergraduate students. They're just repeating. This is the total number of students. So 1,800. This is the total number of students who applied for need-based aid. So again, gives you a sense of how many students have a need for aid and how many students don't. We do the math to break it out because again, just eyeballing this, there's about 700 students who, are not even applying for aid. That means if they're not applying for aid, then they believe that they can probably pay for the full tuition if they needed to. So again, it gives you a sense of maybe the type of student who's applying there or ultimately enrolling, and how much of the student body has a need for need-based aid and support and how many can pay in full. So of the students, but here's the thing, just because you applied for aid doesn't mean that the school feels that you need aid. So that's the difference between line B and C. So line C is the number of students who are actually determined to have need. And it's only those students who are then going to probably receive any sort of need-based aid from Tulane. So you can see, 662 were determined to have need, and basically 100% of them were awarded some amount of need. We don't know yet how much need that they were awarded, but basically of the people who were determined to have need, they all got something. Yes, somebody's saying, I recommend doing the math for freshmen and all undergrads, as some will have first year only awards. Such a great comment. Melinda, I'm assuming you've spent a lot of time on a common data set because you seem to know the ins and outs, which are great. What Melinda is referring to is I am kind of going through, just quoting the numbers in this first column, which is for first year students. And what Melinda is saying, some schools may not give the same type of aid or may not give in the same percentages once you're become an upperclassman. So Melinda's saying you have a junior and a senior, so maybe you've kind of seen this happen, or hopefully it didn't happen to your child, but there's always, unfortunately, the possibility. So some schools will give very attractive aid awards for freshman year to a little bit to like lure in the student, and they don't necessarily give the same awards in sophomore through senior year. This is for need-based aid. So if your student is in this category where they you need-based aid, they're going to qualify, I would do what Melinda is suggesting. I would look at the first year number, which is this first column, and then I would do the same math for undergraduates. I cross my fingers. Hopefully you'll see the same, percentages. But if you don't, again, that's a clue that the college has a different kind of philosophy towards giving aid once you're already a student there. Samantha's asking, will a school award need-based aid and merit? Yes, they definitely can award both types of aid. Okay, so let me just keep going down. So we found here that basically 100% of the students who were eligible for aid actually got aid. Number of students in line D who awarded any need-based self-help aid. Okay, so self-help aid means that they awarded aid, but it was probably in the form of a loan. So Tulane self-help means loan. They gave you aid, but it was a loan as the aid, as opposed to line G, which is they were awarded okay, sorry, line E were awarded any need-based scholarship or grant aid. So if you're awarded scholarship or grant aid, that means that that was money you did not have to pay back. So again, you can see just looking at these numbers that almost 100% of students who had that were determined to have aid got aid, and close to 100% of them got aid that they didn't have to pay back. And then in addition, some percent were given some sort of a loan as a type of aid. Okay, let's continue going on. Here, line I, this is important. On average, the percentage of need that was met of students who were awarded any need-based aid. So this is, if you ever hear the term need met, what percentage of need met is the college offering? This is the number that we're referring to. So basically, Tulane is saying, of the students who had need, if I look at what their need is, I'm just making it up. Let's say, based on the financial aid forms, a student was determined to have, $20,000 in need. Tulane is saying, that we will cover, in most cases, we're going to cover almost 98% of that need. So we're going to give you close to 98% in need. It could be, a combination of grants and other things, but we're going to cover a lot of it, which is great. And, to Melinda's point on the second column here, it goes down a little bit, but they're still doing a pretty good job, Tulane. They're covering 94% of students' need in their, sophomore through senior years. I have seen at some schools, you will see this line of percentage need met. It could be, 60%. It could be, 50%. And so again, if you have a student who might be eligible for need-based aid, understanding these numbers are so important. If you understand these numbers, by the time your student gets their award, or financial aid information, you will not be surprised. You can basically predict, what amount of money your student's gonna receive, because you can know your SAI, from the FAFSA. You can look at what your need is, what the financial need is. Then you come here, you look at the numbers, and you say, well, what percentage of the need met is this school going to do for me? And then you basically have an idea of what your financial aid is that the college is going to give you. So it breaks my heart when I see families on social media, particularly in our Paying for College 101 group, where they're like surprised, oh, my student didn't get the aid that they thought they were going to get, and they are wildly off. I'm not talking about like $1,000. They are like off by $15,000, $20,000. It's because they didn't look at these numbers beforehand, and they didn't do the math, and they didn't understand the process. And I understand it's complicated, but you can see you shouldn't be surprised in this process now that you get a better idea of how it works. Okay, let me see some of the questions. Does this usually line up with the net price calculator estimates? It should. I think maybe they might be off a little bit is for some CSS profile schools, they have like their own special formulas, and they don't really share what they're looking at when they're determining need. But it's more the, like the selective schools and like the tier below, they usually have some pretty good net price calculators. So this should align with the net price calculator. Oh, somebody's saying I'm looking at Clemson's common data set and it's 49%, right? Big difference. So if Clemson is saying they're only covering 49% of your students' need, if you have a student who has a financial need, like, you got to really question, should you be applying there if you need financial aid to, cover the costs? And that if you do apply there and you get the award letter, you shouldn't be surprised that the aid that they offer only covers 49 or 50% of what your need is. You could have known it before your student applied there. So thank you for sharing that, Gina. Thank you for looking that up. That's exactly the type of information you need to be looking for and knowing before your student applies. Okay, so Melinda is now saying, I found that for my senior that this table, the financial aid information, and the next were really close to what we got. I'm glad to hear that. I hope, in most cases I see that also that those numbers are similar. So I'm glad to hear that it's panning out for other people who really look at the numbers. Okay, now I'm going to jump to the next. This is still in section H, but I'm going to jump to the next important table of section H. This is looking at basically merit scholarships. They call them non-need-based scholarships. I'm just going to call them merit to make the language easier. So again, this is, you got to have to do the math, but I'll kind of walk you through it. line N. This is number of students in line A. If you remember line A, I'll scroll back quickly. Line A was this, basically line A is total number of students who enrolled for freshmen, and the next column is for undergrads. So number of students from line A who had no financial need. So you remember, like, the line after line A was number of students who applied for financial aid, and then number of students who actually had were determined to have need. Now this is the other. These are the students who don't have any sort of need. So number of students in line A who had no financial need, but who were awarded non-need-based aid. So these are students who didn't have need, but they got merit. 416 of them. Again, this is where I might do the math. The way I do the math, and I'll show you in our tool, is you can look at a percentage and say, okay, what's 416 out of the line A, which was like 1,800. So what percentage of all the students who are going, or freshmen, what percentage of them got merit? What I'm interested in is what percentage of the students who didn't have any need-based aid, or didn't have any financial need, what percentage of those students actually got merit? Because that's the more important percentage to me. So again, I'm going to make up the numbers, but let's say 60% of the students have a financial need, and then 40% of the students don't. You want to know, of those 40%, how many actually were awarded merit. And that number is going to vary. You're going to see schools where everybody who doesn't have financial need is getting some form of merit. And then it could go to maybe only 30% of the students who don't have a financial need are getting merit. And again, these are clues. So in the case where maybe 30% of the students who don't have a financial need are getting merit, that's actually still good, but it's more likely that that school is being picky, and they're probably looking at the grades, and they're probably offering merit to the students who have the best academic profiles, because that's the tool, that's what they use merit for in most cases. It's to attract that student who might not consider going to the school, but that has a stronger academic profile, and that's why that school wants them to attend, and that's why they're offering them merit scholarships. And then here's the next number that's important, which is line O, is how much money is that school offering? So this is, on average, Tulane is offering $21,000 in merit scholarships. So again, you'd want to do the percentages and look at what percentage of the student who doesn't have need is actually getting merit, and then on average they're getting 21,000. This is where you can predict and estimate if my student applies. Now you kind of have all the numbers, right? You now know what their SAT, ACT breakouts are. I mean, in this case, actually, Tulane is giving you your GPAs. So you have a good idea. Is my student kind of at the higher end of what Tulane is looking for the students who have enrolled? And do they have the other academic factors that Tulane said is important to them? And if they're at the higher end of the academic scale, what's the probability that my student might get merit? You can start to get a sense of, and if they get merit, how much are they going to get? So, if they get merit, they're probably going to get 21,000. They might get a little less. They might get a little more. They're not going to walk away with 40,000 in merit. So you have the ballpark of how much merit Tulane's going to give. And again, you can now start to estimate, okay, if my student doesn't get any, we're not eligible for need-based aid, we're only going to get merit. I didn't look, but let's assume I'm going to guess, like Tulane's like 80,000 or even higher. So you're going to get about $20,000 in merit. Maybe that brings it down to $60,000. Is this school financially something I'm willing to let my student go to? And you know what? You can make all those decisions now. You don't even have to wait necessarily for the acceptance. And this is the type of analysis and discussion you should be doing now before your student even decides to apply there. Okay, I'm going to switch to one more common data set just to show you something slightly different. And then I know I'm running over in time. Okay, let me stop sharing for a second. Okay, And then I'm going to share back. Okay, this is Carnegie Mellon's common data set. I just wanted to pull it up to show you their information with test scores. Okay, here is their and the other reason is just to show you they have the same information, they formatted it differently. Carnegie Mellon went out of their way to make it look a little, they think a little better. You know, it probably does, but I like it just the way it was before, because then you can quickly kind of know where you are in all the sections. But anyhow, this is the section called that admission factors. You can see again rigor of the school record's important, class rank, academic GPA, extracurricular activities. They actually put character and personal qualities as very important. If you notice, Tulane had them as important. So I'm going to guess there's probably something in their essays that are really going to harp on, you know, personal qualities, because they have it, you know, so as one of the highest. Volunteer work, those are all important. Here's a great example: level of applicant interest, not even considered at Carnegie Mellon. So as Tulane had it as important, Carnegie Mellon was like, we don't really care if you show demonstrated interest or not. Okay, but let's look at test scores. Carnegie Mellon is saying they consider them. Again, if you remember, Tulane said that they were important. Carnegie Mellon is saying considered. Okay, but let's go now and look at the percentages of students who submit. Okay, here, can you see this section? These are the percentages of students who enrolled and then submitted their scores. So Carnegie Mellon is claiming that it's just considered, it's a consideration, it's not important, but look at the numbers. There's so many more students who submitted their SAT scores and enrolled and got accepted and enrolled. So I kind of say, they might say it's considered, but I think it's important to Carnegie Mellon, and they're not fessing up. So if your student is interested in Carnegie Mellon, you know, they better have the test score that looks strong, and they probably better submit it. To me, that's what these numbers say. I don't care that they're claiming that they're test optional. I don't even care that they claim that it was just a considered factor. The numbers say something different. So that's what I wanted to point out here. Okay, let me see what questions. Let me just jump one more thing. I'm going to jump to the tool that we have. And this is the reason why we honestly put it together. Oop, I have to stop and reshare my screen. Okay, so we created a tool a few years ago called Insights. And it was because we wanted all of this common data set in one area, and that so that we didn't have to go like school by school looking at the different common data sets. That's one reason. And the second is, you know, unless you have the database of all the common data set information, you can't do searching, you can't do filtering, right? Like, how do I know? What if I want to find all the schools that give, you know, 90% or more of financial aid? What if I want to find all the schools that have an average merit amount of 20,000 or more? What if I want to find all the schools that have an SAT 75th percentile of 1400 or above? You can't do it going, you know, school by school and looking at individual common data sets. But that's why we pulled all this information together here, so that you can do that type of searching and filtering. And the other benefit is we do the math for you. So all those numbers I showed you, you don't have to do the math, we do it. So let me just show you how this works, so you have an idea. But now that you've kind of gone through a common data set, you have a better, a better sense for what the data is that we include in this tool. So most of the data here is the common data set information that I just showed you. We have some information that is from iPads. And the last source of information we have is crowdsourced data that we've collected over the years from our website called Compare Offers, where people actually put in their actual offers. So you remember at the beginning, I said there's no way of really, we can't really check on the college's accuracy. We still can't, but when we see but one of the ways that we started to is that by collecting people's actual offers, we can look at what the college is telling them they're going to give them versus what they're reporting on their common data set. And actually, the good news is the majority of the time it's pretty close. So at least on that level, we can say that they're accurate. So let me just show you. Actually, let me show you Tulane, just because we happen to have just looked at their common data set. And okay, so now you can see, okay, we have the breakout of men versus women, right? This is similar to what we saw. It's actually 60% of the undergraduates are women, 38% are men. This is the ethnicity breakout. Okay, let's look at admissions. This is, again, all the information that's on the common data set, but here's where we've done a little bit more of the math. So the overall admit rate from Tulane is 15%, but we saw in the common data set that they take a lot of students early decision. So their early decision rate is 68%. That's huge, okay? And the other number to look at is, what is this line here? It's not highlighting. What percent of the class got filled early decision? So because Tulane takes so many applicants early decision, they are filling 65% of their class. So again, it only means that there's 35% of the seats that are left. That's why if you look at the regular decision rate, it's 11%. It's just become more competitive to apply regular decision there because they have fewer seats and more students applying. Again, this is not to force people to apply early decision, and it's not to discourage you to apply regular decision, but just know the numbers, that it's just going to be more competitive to apply regular decision to Tulane as the numbers bear out. Okay, so let's just look at one other thing. And then here's the other numbers we were looking at. So what percent of need met? So this is this is from the common data set from the one before, than the one that we looked at. So it looks like they increased, which is interesting. So what we saw is that they meet 97% of need, and before they used to meet 92%. So that's an improvement. And then here's the other numbers that we do the math. So what percent of students do not have need at Tulane? So 71% of students do not have need. That means 71% of students applied either hoping that they were going to get merit, or that their parents knew that they could pay the full sticker price. So again, just kind of tells you the type of family or student that's going there. And then 45% of the students who didn't have need received merit. And in this case, the average merit award was 16,000. Again, I guess it's kind of good news. We looked at the most recent common data set, and it had gone up to 21,000. So that's a little bit of the trend line that you see. And then let me show you one other thing. This
I
is the
have a question.
Yeah.
Can you tell from section H for students who meet needs the average merit awards, or do you just have to extrapolate that from students who didn't have any need?
So you want to know the students who had need, what percentage of them received merit?
No. Well, that too, but how much the merit was. Like, you can clearly see how much the merit was if a student did not have need.
I think I know what you're asking. Yes, you can. I'm just knowing the numbers in my head, how you might do it. Yeah, I think you have to do it on a global, like on a higher level. So you know how much money Tulane gave in merit overall. So I would subtract out. I would honestly kind of just do the average, like take the average, what we just looked at, like 21,000 over 417, students who got merit. I would do that math. I would take that number away from the total amount of merit money that Tulane gave, and then kind of assume that the rest of that money was given to students that had need. And then you can do an average and figure out what the average award of merit for students who had need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Um, yeah, they don't make that part as easy.
They don't. They absolutely don't. I know. Yeah, but yeah, I'll look at I'll look at that a little bit more closely. That's all like quickly off the top of my head how I might do it. And that might be an interesting number that we could calculate and include someplace.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So just going back to this example here, these are the crowdsourced offers for Tulane. Actually, we have like up to date. So this is this current year, students who received offers, you know, what they got. We show it by SAI or the old terminology was EFC. We still kind of have that terminology around a little bit, but this is the range and SAI range. And it gives you, I mean, obviously the lower your SAI range, you probably have more need. And you know, you can see that some of I mean, students who had a really low SAI are getting a lot covered in terms of their need. A lot of people use this information are the parents who don't, students who don't have, sorry, need. And you can see students who had an SAI above 60,000, they might get some need, but they're probably likely not to get it. And they're probably only going to get merit. Again, you can kind of like it ranged a little bit. This is probably obviously a mistake because they didn't send out regular decisions yet. But let me actually go back one more year. Let's go back to here because then we'll have a lot of data. So the students who you know, in this high SAI range got around, you know, between 20 to 30,000. It's not that far off than the numbers that we saw in the common data set. So, you know, this is just like another source of information to look at what the numbers are that students are getting. Okay, one last thing. Let me go back to the searching so that you can get an idea of how to use this tool. So there's lots of different ways you can search. You can search by an individual college, which I just did. You can search by majors. You can search by state or by regions. If you're kind of early on in the searching process, you can search by cost of attendance. Like I want to find a school where maybe I might not get any merit, I might not get any need, but I want to be able to find are there schools out there potentially that I could afford without being offered any money? I don't know. It depends what your budget is, but you can search for you know, schools just by on cost of attendance. You can search for them based on the average merit award. Like show me all the schools there that are offering a merit of, you know, 20,000 and above. We also do the math again for you by net cost. So any school that is offering merit, we subtract it for you and say, we subtract from the cost of attendance. So you can say, show me all the schools that have a net cost of between, you know, 30 and 50,000. And then here's this percentage of net need. Percentage of need met. So if you're a family that is going to qualify for financial aid, this is important to be searching by, right? You want to look at the schools that give like 90% or above. That's, you know, because there's always going to be, there's a difference between what you think your need is and what the school's going to calculate as their need. It's going to be, what they calculate is always going to be less than what you think your need is. So you want this percentage to be as high as possible. And then this is the other area which is good to search by. If your student is looking for the colleges that can offer them merit, you want to find the schools where their test scores put them in the, you know, highest percentile. Again, this kind of goes, the reason why we focus on test scores is because it's back to my comment about GPA data is just not as robust. The colleges don't, the majority of colleges don't share the GPA. Even you can look on the thumbnails, you can see average GPA. We just have a dash. It means the college didn't share it. So if they don't share it, you can't search by it. So that's why we search by test scores. Majority, I would say almost like 98% of colleges are sharing their test scores. And then there's this question, well, my student, even if your student doesn't want to submit their test score, you can still search by it because nobody's going to know what you're searching by. And if your student didn't take a test, I would do, there are some conversion tables where you can take your student's GPA. Prep Scholar happens to be a company that has a lot of data on this, and they show you on average, a student with this type of GPA usually got, in this range of a test score. So I would use those numbers. But again, the reason why we search by test score is really just because that's the best data that the colleges have shared, publicly. But let's just do this example. So my student, let's say, has a SAT of between 1,300 and 1,400. And I want to find all the schools where that test range would put my student in their 75th percentile. So then that's obviously a good chance that they would get merit. So these are all those schools. 197 schools have that test score of 1,300 to 1,400 in the 75th percentile. And then what I would then do is sort these results by average merit award. So now all of a sudden I can very easily see these are the schools that offer merit and that have that test score, 75th percentage test score range of 1,300 to 1,400. And if my student had that test score range and I was looking for schools where they could get merit, I would start with this list. And then, you can see Bennington College offers 90% of the students who don't have a need are getting merit, and they're getting a pretty high average merit award of 40,000. Beloit, another school that gives basically, I'm going to say 100%, 99% of students who do not have need are still getting money. They're getting a $40,000 merit award. So Clarkson. So this is where this is where you can start to make your list and then narrow it down. Maybe my student isn't interested in Wisconsin. I get it. Maybe my student wants to go to Pennsylvania. This is where you would start narrowing it down, but at least now you know what the numbers mean. Now you know how to make an estimate about what merit your student might get and what your net cost will be. Or now you know which schools to look at that are offering need-based aid. Okay, let's see if we can do another search, or let's sort. Let's just because this is the list, let's look at need met, right? And so these schools are saying, Connecticut College, we're going to meet 100% of your students' need if they have need. Okay, that's great. So if my student had that type of test score, and were interested in Connecticut College and they had financial need, you'd want to go there. But let's just pull up Connecticut College for a second. So they are good. Let's see. Oh, here. So again, they give 100% of need. They're going to match it, or they're going to cover it. But they, and they actually also give merit. So that's why I was curious if how good they were for merit. So this is a school that there's actually not that many that kind of overlap that are good for need-based aid and merit, but it looks like Connecticut College is one of them. But my point in kind of like, digging in and looking at these results is that it's really important to know. I call it the, financial aid giving philosophy of the school. Is this a school that's going to help more for need-based aid students? Is this a school that's generous with merit? Can you find that school in the middle, which we kind of did with Connecticut College, who's going to be generous for the families with financial need and generous for the families with merit? And then you've got to match your student to the right college financially, right? If you're a family that needs need-based aid and you apply to a school that only covers 50% or 49%, like we found at Clemson, 49% of need, that's just not smart. You're just not going to get the money that you need. So this is, how you can do the research ahead of time, which I think is really so important. Let me, the families who I've seen do this research get the results that they want financially. And, and then of course, obviously they have to also get this results academically for the students. It's possible. You just got to put in a little bit of elbow grease with the numbers, and you won't go wrong. You really, if you do this type of research, you won't be surprised, at least when the numbers come through, next February through May when your students get results. So hopefully that this was helpful. Sorry, I went way too long on this. But let me see what types of questions there are I can help with. Oops. Where's my chat? Okay. So I've looked at this a lot to try and leverage a merit increase. I would love to have added net costs for out-of-state students. Oh, Melinda, you're asking good questions. I just wish I had the data. If I had the data, I would give it to you. I've honestly I don't think I've ever seen a breakout of I would love to net cost. Oh, sorry, net cost. I was thinking of merit. Net cost for out-of-state students. Some colleges do break out, costs for in-state versus out-of-state. I'm trying to think if I've seen it on the common data set. I'm not sure if it's on the common data set. Sometimes it's just on their website, but that is important numbers to look at. I mean, I guess we can look at it based just on, a cost of attendance for out-of-state versus in-state students. So we do have that. We do have, cost of attendance, out-of-state numbers for in-state. I haven't figured out how to use the SAT in the search. Is that number the 75th percentile number? Okay, so in this search, so here you can decide. I put, oh, I'm not sharing, sorry. Let me go back to sharing. Okay, so in this test score, right, whatever range, you can then decide, do I want to search by the 75th percentile? That's the number I picked. Or I could also search and just say, match this range to what the average range is for that college. Or I can also say, match this range to the crowdsourced data. So show me schools where students have this SAT range and also shared their test scores as part of the offers that they submitted to us. But quite honestly, I think the first two are the most helpful. The 75th percentile is going to show you where your students at like the top range, which is important for getting merit, and the average range, which is, it's just important to know if your students, close to the average or slightly above the average, then they have a good likelihood of, of being actually, accepted from an academic standpoint, as long as they have the other criteria that the colleges are looking for. Okay, let me see what other questions. This should be on the mobile view. I'll double check. Sometimes we do have little glitches here and there, but I will check if that's on the mobile view, Melinda. How can College Insights be useful for younger students like freshmen and sophomore who do not have test scores and a definitive GPA yet? Great question, Grace. If I were in your situation or had a student who didn't have a GPA and didn't have a test score, and I wanted to, I would use College Insights to start to educate myself on the landscape of colleges. So I would use it from a cost perspective. If you have a student in 9th grade or 10th grade, from a family standpoint, one of the most important things I would start with is figure out your family's budget. How much can you afford to put towards college, to pay towards college? And then I would start to use insights to say, okay, and I'm making it up, I don't know what your budget is. Let's say we can afford, $50,000 a year. If my student got no aid, got no merit, what colleges are out there in that price range? That, I would start with that. Then, you probably know at this point if you're a family that's going to receive need-based aid or not. Actually, I would start understanding what your need might possibly be. I would go do estimate what your SAI is from the federal government has an SAI calculator or estimator. I would use that. And then if then you start to realize, hey, I'm not going to get need-based aid. So if I want to reduce the cost of college for my student, they're going to have to receive a merit scholarship. Then I would start again, your student might not have a GPA yet and they don't have a test score, but I would start looking at schools and saying, okay, in order for my student to, get a merit scholarship, what type of test score are they likely to have to get? So I guess the way I would use insights if I had a younger student is to start to understand what goals that my student and I need to, have in order to get the merit scholarships that we might need in order to reduce the cost of college, or just look at the colleges that are potentially in my budget range. So it just starts, you're using it to start to learn the landscape of what colleges you could potentially afford and what type of stats your student is going to need to get money at some of the colleges. Melinda Sejang, I would also look at if you will get need-based aid or not, right? That really impacts your selection strategy if you are prioritizing money. Maybe, I mean, I talked a lot about data tonight, but it's all really in the goal of Melinda's using a great word, selection strategy. The college list your student creates is so important. It's going to drive so much of the results. And if you understand the data that you're researching and to help you pinpoint the colleges that your student ultimately applies to, it's going to make your results that much better. Because the college list, to me, is the defining stage of the process. Your student can't get accepted to a college that they don't apply to. Your student can't get money from a college that you don't apply to. So the colleges on that list are going to determine really what your final cost of college is, because it's going to be where your student gets money from, and the colleges, the cost of those colleges on that list is going to determine, how much college is going to cost you, because and if you're going to have to take out loans or not. Okay, let's see what other questions are here. Oh, yep, somebody was just confirming that they found that the CSS profile schools tend to have pretty accurate net price calculators. I would agree. Another way that you can use insights here, and let me see, let me share, and there's another view that you get to see the data for. Once you create a list, you can then view it in this table format. Let me just add all of the data to it. And what this helps to do is then you can sort these columns, by the numbers. So somebody was talking about a CSS profile school. You might actually, there's a strategy. Some families might not want to apply to a CSS profile school. They might want to only apply to a FAFSA only school, maybe in a divorce situation, because it just might be financially beneficial to them. They might appear to have more need just using the FAFSA and not using the CSS profile. So that's another way that you can use the information here. Looking for the column. There's definitely a column that says whether or not they let's see, it's definitely here. Oh, here. So CSS profile. Might want to sort my results to see, these are all the schools on this list that don't ask for the CSS profile. That might be part of your strategy. So, that's just another way of using some of this information. Okay, any other questions I can answer? Let's see.
I have another question.
Uh-huh.
My daughter got an offer from Clark University in Massachusetts.
Yep.
And when we applied, they had done the CSS profile. And I was just recently looking at it to do an update for when her brother goes to college, what her need would change to. And it's taken down now. And I'm wondering if you've seen that at other schools. I'm wondering in particular if that's partially related to all the things that are happening politically and uncertainty.
What did they take down?
They're not on they don't have a college board calculator now.
And
Which,
this is on their website. So they don't have the net price
yeah,
calculator?
it used to link to the college board net price calculator, and now it's linking to shopping sheets or something like that for their net price calculator.
Okay, here. Can you see it? I think I'm here. I'm just doing I just put in Clark University net price calculator. Let's see. Oh,
And I
yeah,
was wondering, I'm just wondering if you're seeing that at other places. As I I felt like they did do a financial aid seminar a couple of weeks ago, and they, as most colleges, have uncertainties about what's going to happen.
yeah.
And I wondered if that was contributing or if it's just kind of a random thing.
No, so if you so it says here log into your shopping sheet / college raptor. So what I'm guessing, and I haven't gone through this, but what I'm guessing what Clark University did is so College Raptor is a company that creates net price calculators for colleges. So I think Clark University just switched the net price calculator provider who provided it. College
Oh,
Board provides net price calculators. Some colleges themselves create their own. There's another company called like My Intuition or Net Intuition that
my
they
intuition is part of the college board. It's their quick calculator.
Net Intuition. You sure?
My
That's a private
intuition,
company.
it's the one that has like six.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're their own company. Well, I'll look at that in a second. But College Raptor is another company that does net price calculators. So I think that
yeah.
Clark just switched.
I found that they were very wrong most of the
Who?
time.
College Raptor?
Hmm.
Oh, could be. I'm not saying that. I'm not endorsing them.
I know I used them, but yeah, they were wildly different a lot of times
Oh boy, that's not good.
in both directions.
Uh-huh. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Um, hmm. I thought that it was called, maybe it's called Intuit. I forget the name of that company.
It shows up like a calculator,
Yes,
kind
yes,
of.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's something like My Intuition,
That's it,
and
my
it's the
intuition. Okay.
short form of the College Board calculator for when you want a quick assessment.
Yeah, but this is actually a private company. They're not associated with the College Board.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a
I didn't
professor
know that
who
they
put this
almost
together.
always come hand in hand.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Um, so so sorry. Yeah, so it sounds like Clark changed their calculator and it's not as good. And your student goes to Clark?
She was accepted. We haven't decided where she's going.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I was just surprised and um I did wonder if it was just related to uncertainties around
I don't
um
think so. I
what's
think
going
that
to
they
happen.
probably switched. I'll tell you another little piece of information. I mean, so College Raptor was bought by Citizens Bank, which is a loan company, which I don't particularly like that kind of connection.
Yeah,
So now you have a loan company who
telling you how much college is going to cost.
exactly, not just that,
Yeah.
now they have your information.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, cuz it's saved.
yeah, exactly. So I wish they were all a little bit more transparent about that.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, okay, let's see what else we have. In the CDS for Rollins, it says tests are not required for admissions, but considered if submitting, but on the grid, it says it's important. Yeah, so that's what I mean. So Samantha, there's kind of sometimes inconsistencies in what colleges say, maybe, on their website and what they have in their common data set. So you're saying that Rollins, it is test optional because it's not required, but in their grid, they're saying it's important. So to me, they're saying, yeah, we're test optional, but we kind of prefer it if your student submits the test, and we like to kind of use that information for admissions. So they're trying to straddle both sides there, but my guess is if my student was applying to Rollins, I would want them to have a good score and I would probably submit it. For example, I want to find colleges that offer the best biology major. Is it possible to find it on Insights or a common data set? That's so the question about kind of best biology major is That's like a rankings question. We don't necessarily have rankings by majors of colleges. And then you'd have to decide how you'd want to determine like what makes a good a college, provide a good biology major. You can only see how many people graduated with a biology major. Exactly. It tells you, the common data set like tells you how many students graduated with biology, but this idea of what a best biology, you'd have to do other types of research to really determine, which colleges are up there in terms of biology. So we are working, somebody's asking, would it be possible to update the crowdsource offer so it always starts with the newest data? If you give us a few weeks, we are working on a new version of Insights. We just, so I have to be honest, we know there's a few little glitches in the current version, but we just can't clean that one up knowing that we've got a new one coming out. So we have a new version coming out in a few weeks, and it will start with the newest crowdsource data. Actually, more importantly, it has some more data in it to filter and search by. So we're including in the newer version the data about submitted test scores. We have actually admission factors in there, so you can search for, colleges based on admission factors. We actually are putting in information from the Common App to know which schools require supplemental essays. So we have some new data coming in, and some more ways about how you can filter, which will be exciting to show you very, very soon. Okay. How about a way to filter out schools that require, chapel? We don't actually even have the data around chapel, so unfortunately, we can't do it. But in the new version that's coming out, this idea, you can actually filter out colleges as well as filter in colleges. So that's like a new way that we're allowing people to filter. Okay, well, I kept you all on kind of late. I don't even know how many people are left. Oh, like 50 of you. Thank you for staying. Thank you for asking questions. Hopefully this was helpful. I love the data. I think it's important. If you have questions, like, let me know. I so want to encourage people to look at the data. It will really help you. It will really steer you away from problems, steer you towards, better solutions. So I know it's research intensive, but it makes a huge difference in this big decision, and that you're making with your student, both for your student and for your family, because college costs are impacting family finances a lot these days. I will be sharing the recording. We'll be sending it out tomorrow. Lovely to see everybody. Take care. Hope to see you soon again. Bye.